The partition of India after British rule was disastrous. Millions died as a result. Millions more were displaced. 60 years later, tensions between India and Pakistan continue. Any decision to move forward must come from inside Iraq, not outside. Here's what the U.S. must do. We must provide strong diplomatic backing and leadership. We should propose alternatives and facilitate solutions. We must lead the reconstruction of Iraq, convening a major donor conference of nations with a clear stake in Iraq's stability. But from years of experience, I can tell you that solutions imposed from outside almost always fail. Now, despite the hard work and bravery of our servicemen and women, the American presence is not aiding the cause of peace, but rather contributing to the cycle of violence. What some of my Democratic colleagues that may have spoken to you today don't seem to understand it is that our presence gives common cause to insurgents who are united only in their hatred of our occupation. When we leave, a major cause of the violence will end. The Iraqis will drive al-Qaeda out of their country. And most important, the political stalemate which is perpetuating the violence will be broken. And new political possibilities will finally start to emerge. Now, Senators Clinton, Obama, and Edwards have said we have to wait and see how things go before we know how many troops can come out and how quickly. I say there's been enough waiting and watching and seeing. If you haven't seen enough to know that we need to get all the troops out, then you aren't watching the same war that the rest of America is seeing. And Senators Clinton and Obama, when directly asked, refused to commit to getting all troops out by 2013. Tens of thousands could remain in Iraq through 2013. And Senator Clinton, who I deeply respect, said she might have troops in Iraq at the end of her second term. Leaving troops is just changing the mission. We need to end this war. While I respect my Democratic colleagues, their plan simply will not end the war. Over 3,800 brave Americans have lost their lives. Nearly 30,000 have been wounded, mainly with mental trauma. How many more mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, wives, husbands, and children must lose their loved ones before we get our troops out of this crossfire? How many more of our young people will die before we recognize that our troops cannot win someone else's civil war? There are other numbers that we don't talk about, or that are not talked about enough in America. At least 100,000 Iraqi civilians have been killed in this conflict. More than 2 million have fled their country. And another 2 million have been internally displaced. That's 15% of the population. We can't sit still and allow this humanitarian crisis to continue. We simply cannot watch a nation become homeless. We need to establish a multilateral resettlement program and provide assistance to the countries that are accepting Iraqi refugees. We must not turn our back on those who have risked their lives and the lives of their families to aid us. It is unconscionable that the administration refuses sanctuaries to Iraqis who have helped our troops in our country and who are now targets because of it. When I'm president, that will change. Indeed, I will change. I can tell you've been listening to a lot of speeches. Indeed, I will change our approach to the entire region. It's called diplomacy. America needs a new regional approach in order to take the lead in bringing peace and security to the Middle East. Amidst an avalanche of incompetence, the president's record in the Middle East stands out as singularly flawed. For years, he disengaged from the peace process, allowing the situation to drift downward. Because of the administration's policies, we're losing the struggle for Muslim and Arab hearts and minds to bin Laden's bleak vision of Islam. The president has failed, and the United States has not promoted the cause of international peace in the Middle East. Our diplomatic disengagement the fact that we have no Middle East peace on, has had the effect of reducing both our influence and the possibility of peace. The results have been catastrophic. The peace process is broken down. Hamas has taken over the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah is stronger than ever. Now, I support Secretary Rice's recent efforts, and I wish her success. But the fact is, it's too little too late for this team. There's little credibility there. We need a new realism. We need a new realism in American foreign policy. We need to reject the fantasy that we can transform the Middle East through the unilateral application of military force. We need to stop threatening and snubbing difficult regimes and instead start engaging them diplomatically. We need strong diplomacy backed up by credible military power, solid alliances, partnerships, and economic opportunity. What greater goal than to create an Arab middle class? We need to talk not only to our friends, but also to our adversaries. That means talking to Iran, no matter how objectionable its governing elites may be. We need to engage them with no preconditions and no illusions. For decades, inflammatory rhetoric like the axis of evil and the great Satan has impeded rational dialogue between the United States and Iran. We need to stop the hard words, the name-calling, the threats, and start the hard work of negotiation and strategic diplomacy. And the road to peace will not be easy. It'll be hard. It always is. But to improve Iran's behavior and to improve our relationship, it would be helpful if both sides could look beyond past injuries and injustices and look forward for the good of America, for the good of Iran, for the sake of peace. Both nations must focus not on the past, but on the future. We need to approach Iran with open eyes. What we do not need, what does not advance the cause of peace, is saber-rattling and the whispers of war. The president talks about Iran and World War III in the same breath. He and the vice president seem to be looking for a reason, any reason to travel again down the path to war. And when Senator Clinton voted recently for a provocative resolution calling a branch of the Iranian government, quote, a terrorist organization, she helped Mr. Cheney and Mr. Bush lay the first stones on that path. She should know better. With this president, the resolution of autumn, with this president, my worry is that the resolutions of autumn lead to the wars of spring. We need to end the war in Iraq, not start another one with Iran. Now, let me be very clear. Iran must not be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. But we need to be smart about how we stop them from going nuclear. We must remember that no nation has ever been forced to give up nuclear weapons. But many nations have been persuaded to give them up. There are moderate and pragmatic elements in the Iranian leadership who are persuaded. We need to strengthen them and weaken the hardliners. But a military attack on Iran would only silence the moderates and strengthen the nation's paranoid elements and hardline elements, greatly emboldening those who argue that Iran needs nuclear weapons to protect itself from the United States. Thus, it would increase, not decrease, the likelihood that Iran would acquire nuclear weapons. It would further inflame the Arab world, the Muslim world, fanning anti-American sentiment. The way to get Iran to forswear nuclear weapons is to work with the United Nations and the international community to offer them robust security guarantees and secure supplies of nuclear fuel if they renounce all enrichment activities. That is a bargain that I believe would work. I also believe the United States should lead global negotiations to further reduce the size of all nuclear arsenals, including our own, and to consolidate all fissionable material, loose nuclear weapons, nuclear materials in the world to get it out of the hands of terrorists. American leaders, this would be an effort that I believe is critically important.